Welcome to the Fear and Greed Afternoon Report for Wednesday, the 15th of June, 2023. I'm Sean Aylmer. Every afternoon, we've got the 5 stories that happened today that you need to know about. Story number 1, the S&P ASX 200 closed up 0.3% today to 7,162 points. It was a good day for the lithium stocks, but not healthcare leader CSL. More on that shortly. Materials stocks were easily the best performers, while financials also did well. The healthcare sector tanked, while tech stocks also had a rough day. China's decision to cut some interest rates yesterday and expectations of a boost in the world's second largest economy helped push the price of iron ore higher. Now, of course, that's an ingredient of steel, which they need when they're developing. As a result, BHP share price jumped 3.6% today. Fortescue Metals was up 4.3%, and Rio rose 2.9%. Otherwise, Macquarie Group, Westpac, National Australia and Woodside all rose more than 1%. On the flip side, WiseTech Global and Xero were off around 2%, and Aristocrat Leisure was 1.5% lower. Story number 2, CSL's share price tumbled 7% today after the blood plasma group said earnings hadn't met expectations with weak margins in its blood collection centres. The third largest company on the ASX also operates a drugs division, and it's flagged the impact of generic drugs competing against its iron deficiency drug. While earnings this financial year will come in at the top end of guidance, it's the forecast for next financial year that sent the share price lower. Profit margins at blood collection centres have been hurt by COVID when people were more reluctant to give blood. That meant CSL had to top up incentives, normally payments to donors, and that is still hurting. The bad news is that given the competition in the market, CSL still has to pay those high incentives. Its share price of around $287 a share is about the same as it was immediately before the COVID outbreak. Story number 3, senior executives at some of Australia's largest listed companies pocketed average pay rises more than double the rate of inflation over the past year. The base salaries of managing directors across ASX-listed companies rose an average of 14%, while CEO salaries rose 15% on average. That's according to the latest annual board and executive remuneration report released by Governance Institute of Australia. Chief Executive Megan Motto said it's an indication that a tight labour market and the rising cost of living is playing out at the executive level as well. She said with AGM season looming, boards will need to have a strong narrative around their remuneration policies to stand up to shareholder scrutiny and manage reputational risks. The report also highlights that 42% of ASX-listed board directors and 71% of ASX-listed senior executives received a pay rise in the last 12 months. Story number 4, IAG is lifting Australian home insurance prices by 20% and car premiums by about 14%, putting more pressure on households. The price rise has prompted IAG Chief Executive Nick Hawkins to say he'd never in his career seen the whole industry push through such hefty increases across a range of insurance products. Increasing cost pressures are behind the rise, he said. Now, IAG, one of Australia's 2 biggest home and car insurers with brands including NRMA and CGU, is not price gouging customers, according to Hawkins. Instead, it's trying to get a reasonable return, taking into account the material input cost changes the industry has had to contend with over the last 12 to 24 months. IAG share price closed up 2.6% today. And story number 5, well, Donald Trump this morning pleaded not guilty to federal criminal charges that he unlawfully kept national security documents and lied to officials who sought to recover them. Then he went on a tirade. He called the charges the most evil and heinous abuse of power in America's history. He went on to say that President Joe Biden had engaged in political persecution like, and I quote, something straight out of a fascist or communist nation, end quote. And Department of Justice Special Counsel Jack Smith, who brought the case against Mr. Trump, was deranged, according to Mr. Trump, that is. Mr. Trump, who, if convicted, can still campaign to be president and won't be barred from taking office, is beating his closest Republican rival by 30 percentage points in polling, and he holds a winning margin over Mr. Biden, 45.5% to 43.7%. That's it for the afternoon report for Wednesday, the 14th of June, 2023. Michael Thompson and I will be back tomorrow morning with the Thursday edition of Fear and Greed. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your evening.